learning things in a way that is much more enjoyable and much more beneficial to us individually, which means that not only are we going to get more out of the study and we're going to enjoy it more, but we're probably going to learn more and it's going to be so much easier as well. Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Harry and I have a confession to make. I actually like studying. So today I'm going to talk a bit about why that is. I then want to talk just a little bit about why I think some of us don't actually enjoy studying. And then I'm going to finish it off with talking about some of the things that we can do and some of the things that I do while studying to kind of shift gears a little bit and try and get us to actually start enjoying study. Now, the reason I actually enjoy studying is because, well, it's fun. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not some super giant intergalactic study megalord that can study all day, every day, even when it's something that I don't actually enjoy. Like, if I'm studying something and I'm not interested at it at all, then yes, definitely I'm gonna much rather be watching Netty or playing Warzone with the boys, right? So especially when I am studying these topics that I'm not really enjoying and they're not something that I'm actively interested in, I do need to have a few little extra reminders to make myself enjoy the process a little bit more. And that's where the 5 little tips that I want to introduce in this video come from. So I thought a good way to start the video would be for me to just run through these 5 tips and what I do and how I use them when I'm studying to make sure that I am still enjoying it. So first things first, I always want to make sure that I understand the reason for why I'm wanting or needing to study right now. I find that even if you just stop for about 30 seconds and have a really deep think about what you're trying to get out of this study session, it can be really helpful to putting you back on track, especially on those days where you're just feeling not in the mood or you're tired and the last thing you could think of is sitting down and studying, because you're never going to be able to actually enjoy something and get a lot out of it if you don't agree with the reasons for why you're doing it in the first place. Now, I also know that I'm like a really big visual learner, yeah? So whenever I feel myself getting into a bit of a slump, bang, that's it. Chuck some YouTube on, put some patho vids on, and I can just sit back and watch. I'll probably take a few notes throughout as well, but I almost always at the end of it feel so much more productive and feel like I've gotten so much more done than if I just kept on going and slogged through the textbook. I also kind of like to gamify the experience, I suppose, for myself. I think that's because I am a little bit of a gamer boy myself and I'm a big achievement hunter. So I feel like if I give myself a bit of a challenge to kind of complete while studying, I kind of trick myself into enjoying it and feeling quite motivated to get stuff done. Even though I know I'm actually not really getting more done, I certainly feel like I am. And sometimes this actually works out really, really well because I end up studying for longer than I had planned, purely because I'm enjoying what I'm doing so much. One of the biggest reasons why I enjoy studying when I do too is because I'm making sure I'm using stuff that I actually enjoy using. Now, it might seem a little silly, but I find that it's so much more beneficial to be using something that you enjoy using, right? Like, if you have to take some flashcards or you have to write some notes, like, it's just going to be god awful if your computer is always crashing while you're trying to make them, or the pen feels uncomfortable and doesn't work properly. That's why, and I 100% stand by this, I buy specific pens for when I need to write notes, because I know that way that they're going to be comfortable and they're going to feel nice on the page when I'm writing them out. And when I need to make my flashcards, I do them all on my PC because I love the way that my keyboard and mouse feel, and I do all my gaming on it so I know that the system's going to run flawlessly. And lastly, I organize everything. I probably organize my life way too much, like ridiculously too much, but it really helps keep me on track and prevents me from procrastinating. I find that it also takes like the stress away from studying as well, because I know where I'm going to be studying, what I'm going to be studying, and for how long I'm going to be studying for. And I've been doing this for so long now that I even probably know how much I'm going to get done in each study block. And I think if you take away that stress and you kind of give yourself a bit more structure around it, then it eliminates any other possibility of fun being drained away from the experience. All right, now please bear with me. I'm just going to talk about really quickly about why we don't enjoy studying, because I think this is a really important point to touch on before we get into the 5 key points of how to actually enjoy our study a bit more. Because I think if we understand why we don't enjoy studying, then we can be more aware of it in our minds and perhaps shift our mindset to actually enjoy it a little bit more. So I promise this will only take just a little second, but I think it's really important to understand as well. Now, the reason I feel that most of us really don't enjoy studying is because it was forced upon us in our early schooling, right? Like, we were constantly told that we had to study subjects we didn't like, and do homework for topics that we just didn't care about, otherwise we wouldn't pass. I have this vivid memory of being in high school, right? And I absolutely hated maths as a kid. And we were given homework over the Christmas holidays to do for that subject for the next year. And I remember getting my maths homework and putting it at the very, very bottom of my school bag under absolutely everything, knowing that I would forget about it and therefore wouldn't do it. And that's exactly what happened. So I went straight through, started year 12 maths, first day, and I was already in trouble. But I had a pretty good holiday though. And the reason I did this was because over the years I developed such a strong negative stigma towards study, right? Where if I wasn't remotely interested in the subject, I just outright wouldn't do it. And I think we've all probably been through this at some point, and it becomes sort of like this negative thought spiral where just the sheer thought of the study alone puts us in a negative frame of mind. So why would we ever want to do study at all? But this becomes problematic, especially when we move into things like our university years, where it's really, really important for us to do well, in most cases, but you are going to come across subjects that you don't actually particularly enjoy, which, thanks for bearing with me, now leads into the first point that I wanted to touch on about making studying more enjoyable. Right, so there's no way for us to actually enjoy studying if we're constantly thinking about it in such a negative frame of mind. So our aim here is to kind of reshape the way that we think about it so that we can look at it more positively. Like, we want to recognize the importance of what we're learning and why we're learning it. And a good way to go about this is to try and think about how you can relate what you're learning now to other aspects of your life. Like, even if it's something really, really simple, like trying to get better at calculating percentages for Black Friday sales, you know? Like, for example, as I just mentioned, I used to be god awful at math, right? Like, absolutely hopeless. Like, oh, like I didn't even know that this was exactly the same as this. Like, yeah, I was pretty hopeless. But a way that I really used this way of thinking to make myself want to enjoy maths more was that I got myself thinking that, hey, if I want to do anywhere near decent on the GAMSAT in 2020 last year, then I had to get somewhat decent at math to be able to do well. And then because of this, I started to enjoy it a little bit more and I started to see its inherent value. And not only this, but now I'm much better at seeing math in other aspects of life, and it's really, really helped me. From budgeting to try and save a house to diluting drugs in the back of an ambulance. And pretty much ever since this realization, I've been genuinely interested in math. And yes, I know for almost all of this stuff, we can just use a calculator, but actually understanding it on a deeper level gives it a little bit more inherent value, and I've definitely gained a lot more appreciation for the process and the numbers themselves. In saying this, I feel there are two aspects at play here. Even if we do manage to change the way we think about our study, I feel we're going to hit a roadblock pretty soon if we're not actually studying in a way that is enjoyable and conducive to the way that we learn. So this is where understanding what our learning niche is comes into play. And the way I like to define this is that it's basically any kind of study that requires the least amount of effort to get the most amount of gain. So the four that I am most aware of are visual, which is basically any kind of visual learning. So it's like YouTube, like diagrams, all those sorts of visual aids. There's then interpersonal, which is somebody who really likes to learn through collaborating with others and being a part of a group discussion. We then have tangible, which is someone who really likes to be hands-on and likes to hold and touch things and see how all the moving pieces change and interact. And you could get like a 3D model of something online, or even look at a generated one on the internet, or hey, even use bits and pieces around the house to simulate certain different aspects if that's something that might help you understand it a little bit better. And then we then have intrapersonal, which is somebody who gets a lot of value over working by themselves and collating and summarizing their own individual notes. So I really hope I got them right. Therefore, I'm sure there are heaps and heaps more out there, but they're the ones that I am most aware of. But if you do want to read up on this anymore, just hit up old mate Google. He'll be able to help you out a ton, I'm sure. Now, I feel that most people may actually be a combination of a few, but the most important thing is just to be aware of what yours actually are. Because if we do want to be enjoying our study, then we may as well be studying in a way that's actually like enjoyable, because there's no point getting yourself all jacked up and ready to smash out a heap of study and then sit down and watch YouTube videos for hours, when really the best way that you study and learn and absorb information is through collating and summarizing your own notes. In saying this, I myself am a huge visual learner, and I'm also really interpersonal as well. So when it comes to studying, I'm a massive YouTube fiend. Like, I'll just sit there and smash out a heap of videos. And then once I've built up this general understanding and this good idea and comprehension of the topic, that's when I then like to go to other people and have a group discussion and try and teach somebody else, because I find that's where I really solidify all the key foundations in my knowledge. So it's now at this point where we're able to think about studying in a little bit more of a positive mindset. And not only that, but we are studying and learning things in a way that is much more enjoyable and much more beneficial to us individually. Which means that not only are we going to get more out of the study and we're going to enjoy it more, but we're probably going to learn more, and it's going to be so much easier as well. So being able to make a game out of studying is a really good way to kind of keep us motivated and push us through when our attention starts to fade a little bit. I'm sure a lot of you may have heard about this before, but if you haven't, it's basically just kind of creating a little bit of a challenge or some sort of an objective for you to try and achieve while studying for the next hour or maybe the next 2 hours of your session. Like, to give you an example, say if you're creating Anki cards, right, and you want to finish up in about an hour. So you give yourself the challenge of completing, say, 30 Anki cards within that hour. Now, I don't know, that could be way too much or it could be way too little, depending on how fast you are at making cards. But yeah, and then you just want to try and really test yourself to see if you can reach that 30. And it just kind of makes it a little bit more enjoyable, because even though you're still getting the same amount of work done, it kind of shifts your focus away from the actual work and kind of makes it a little bit more exciting. So the way I like to think about this, right, is that you're kind of like an RPG character in a game where with each little objective completed, you earn a little bit more of a reward. And then as you go through completing all these objectives, eventually you complete the final big quest reward that gives you the ultimate weapon or the item or the achievement to slay the final boss, which would then signify the end of your study session. And then this massive big quest reward can be anything. It can be anything from passing the exam to sitting on the couch and allowing yourself to binge watch Friends for the rest of the day, guilt-free. Now, I like to think of these sort of like our secret weapons. They can be so small, but exactly what we need to kind of keep ourselves motivated and enjoying the experience of studying that little bit more. I know some people really don't like to buy things or invest in study utensils or their study in general, but I think it can really make all the difference here. These can be absolutely anything. It can range from buying a brand new laptop because just the idea of using that shiny new piece of tech is enough to get you excited about studying, to something as small as buying a bunch of different colored pens because you like your notes to be quite colorful and color-coded and laid out in a really neat, presentable way. Because as I mentioned at the start of the video, right, if you're using something that you don't enjoy or it doesn't work properly or it's really uncomfortable, it's going to drain your enjoyment that much quicker. And of course you're not going to be wanting to study. I believe investing in your study is important, and it's often a really neglected area of our lives because if we think about it really pragmatically, it can get done without any of these cool bits and pieces. But I don't agree with this, because just like any job, you need the right tools to get it done properly, study included. And finally, try and be as prepared as possible. I feel that a lot of the enjoyment is taken away from studying because of the large amounts of stress associated with it, mainly because we've left all our study until the last 2 weeks of the semester before the exam. I've been there way too many times, and it's definitely not a situation that makes me feel compelled or excited to want to go and study. Nowadays, I think I've swung completely to the total opposite side of the spectrum. I just know exactly what I'm going to study, where and when and for how long every day. And I think that's a really good way to go about it, because it means that it takes away a lot of the second guessing and it takes away a lot of that uncertainty and that window for procrastination and for other things to interrupt us. Because if we get rid of all these little distractions and all we know that we have to do right there and then is study, then it makes it easier for us to sit down, which over the long run will make us enjoy it more because it feels less stressful and less of a hassle, because we already know that we've planned it into our day to sit down and do a couple hours of good work. So if we can, studying consistently throughout the year is a surefire way to reduce all that stress that we've been talking about associated with studying, and also make us feel more relaxed when we go to study, so that it isn't such a big burden on our lives, or at least it doesn't feel like it is anyway. You know, actually thinking about this is probably a really, really important tip, and probably should have been further up in the video. So if you've made it this far and you're watching it right now, props to you, you're a real one, and we've got this. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. If you got a lot of value out of this, you know the drill. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Please leave a comment down below about how you keep your studying more enjoyable, because I'd love to see what you guys are doing, and hopefully I can pick up a few things for myself. And until then, have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Bye.